people are doing. So you might be wondering, why am I bothering with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra when we already have the 14 series, the 14 Pro or the Ultra, who knows where any of those will launch. They're coming out real soon. Well, it's simple enough. This is gonna set a baseline and exactly tell us where the 14 series as a whole can upgrade the camera system, because as good as the cameras are, and let's face it, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, if any at all, it is one of the camera phones that we have all come to know and love. And well, it'll tell us exactly where the 14 series can improve and should improve. So let's find out. And so we are kicking things off with the Leica vibrant and authentic modes on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, which I do like. It's a fantastic option to have, and it's something that every single smartphone company should implement in one way or the other. I wish OnePlus had something like a Leica vibrant to give us more vibrant images for those who like vibrant colors. Fortunately for me, I like a natural approach, and the OnePlus already has one like that. If you really want authentic, natural looking colors, well then use Leica Authentic, as the name would indicate. And yes, it does give you less saturation in general, gives you more realistic colors and a healthy amount of contrast, which I really like, as you might have guessed already. And yes, the contrast is actually really nice on both. However, this is one of the problems on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Main camera close-ups. You can't really get very close with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. At this point, I think you can tell that the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is far behind when it comes to main camera close-ups, and it's really unfortunate because the sensor is so bloody high quality on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra that it just feels underutilized. Also, the colors are completely off on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra because, as you might know, coffee looks brown, not that weird yellow that we're getting. But then of course, backlit. How do these phones fare? I would say exceptionally well on both because they look really nice. I think the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is maybe undersaturating some of the greens. Like right in the foreground, you can see some of the greens look a little too desaturated. The OnePlus is maintaining, I would consider this to be a perfect balance of colors and contrast. It is doing an exceptional job. There's no complaints here. This is about as perfect an image as I could have expected given how harsh the lighting was in this situation. Now then, with the ultrawide cameras, this is where the Xiaomi actually gets fairly interesting. So regular ultrawide shots are actually quite phenomenal here. As you can see, it looks really nice, very accurate colors on the Xiaomi this time around. And you also get one of the widest ultrawide cameras that I've ever used in my entire life. But when we tried a backlit shot, yeah, it's I wouldn't say that the Xiaomi looks horrible, but the HDR processing on the OnePlus is going crazy. To be entirely honest, as per my preferences, and to be honest, those are the only preferences I can speak for accurately, I would consider both of these to be going too far in two opposite directions. The OnePlus 12 is way too flat, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is way too contrasty, so something in between would be the perfect image in my opinion. But one thing I obviously wanted to point out is that something that the OnePlus 12 does in general is very impressive for me. It can take high resolution shots with the same level of dynamic range that you get with the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Now the high res isn't exactly exceptional on the OnePlus 12, we'll get to that. But as you can see, we are comparing the high-res shots on both, and the Xiaomi 13 Ultra's dynamic range, it takes a massive hit, and as you might have expected, this is definitely something that I feel Xiaomi can improve upon. Now then, for macro. Now this, I would consider this to be a necessary upgrade that we need to see with the 14 Pro or the Ultras, whichever one I can get my hands on, or maybe both if I'm lucky. But anyways, you can see the macro it's not even a comparison at this point. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra doesn't even look like I'm taking a macro shot. The OnePlus, it gets very close. There are other smartphones like, the Samsungs and the iPhones. They can get even closer than the OnePlus can. So you can get the idea and the picture, right? Just how far behind the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is. I know I'm being very harsh, but it's for a good reason. I'm trying to scrutinize and find out exactly where I want to see upgrades on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. And zoom is definitely an area where I think upgrades are necessary. More on the processing side of things, that's my presumption at least. But here, as you can see, we're zooming in from the ultra-wide camera, going over to the main camera, and yes, I do kind of prefer the higher contrast on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. Personal preference, but yes, let's face it, higher contrast is something that I'll always like. Then we have the 2x. Now, supposedly, both of these phones try to use sensor crop. Now, OnePlus 12's main camera sensor crop doesn't work properly. This is a very good reason I say that. I'll get to the reasoning part, but as you can see, when we do a 500% crop, the detail difference is significant and it leans towards the Xiaomi 13 Ultra by quite a lot. Even though the Xiaomi doesn't try to process or really exaggerate the details in their images, it still pulls ahead by a fair bit compared to the OnePlus. Now then, 3x. I think the OnePlus 12 has possibly the highest quality 3x sensor that I've ever had the pleasure to use. And even though the Xiaomi sensor is good, it doesn't even come close because the OnePlus 12 is on a different level and it's quite impressive. And this right here is 5x. Now, you might have noticed already, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra has started to underexpose. It's not increasing the contrast or anything, it is underexposing and just the general brightness is way lower than it should be. Then we got 6x. Now this right here is a sensor crop, but from the 3x telephoto camera on the OnePlus 12. And boy is it high quality, because even though the main camera sensor crop doesn't work well, with the telephoto camera you can get insane amounts of detail. I mean, think about it. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra is just cropping into 6x from its 5x periscope zoom. That doesn't produce nearly enough detail to compare against the OnePlus 12, which is just doing a sensor crop from its 3x. And this is why I said that the Xiaomi needs an upgrade, because even at 10x I can clearly tell that the OnePlus is significantly sharper. Maybe it's something to do with the processing, you know, the way they just don't try to process and bring out details in their images, Xiaomi that is. Maybe they need to add a little bit more juice in there. Just a pinch, just enough to bring out the details without looking over processed. It's a delicate balance, I understand, but still. Now then, high resolution. This is with the main cameras and 50 megapixels on both. And the reason it gets very interesting is simple. Xiaomi's image is about 100 times better, 100 times more realistically detailed as opposed to the OnePlus 12. I'm not exactly sure what the problem on the OnePlus is, whether it's processing or the hardware. I'm honestly not certain about it, but all I can tell you is that the high res from the main and the ultrawide camera on the OnePlus 12, they're not all that good. And that's why I have an ultrawide high res to prove my point. Now, I do want to mention another thing. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra has a much wider field of view, therefore framing it wasn't quite easy. I can tell right now that I didn't get close enough to match the framing, but then zooming in to 500% and the detail level is pretty similar. That's not a good thing, because the OnePlus 12, it just doesn't give you a lot of detail, as I mentioned, with the main camera and with the ultrawide. Xiaomi 13 Ultra producing the same amount of detail also indicates that it has a similar kind of problem. So I'm definitely hoping that this is something Xiaomi can fix with the 14 series. The OnePlus 12 is already out there. I don't think there's much hope here. Now then, with 3x, you know, this is where the tables are gonna turn real fast, because as I mentioned, OnePlus's 3x camera is insanely good. Probably one of the absolute best out there. And well, here's your proof. Yes, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra focused, and yes, that's the maximum amount of detail it can produce even with high resolution. It's a fairly nice sensor that we have on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, but you can see it just doesn't have the processing to keep up with the OnePlus 12, not to mention that the hardware on the OnePlus 12 is significantly better than what Xiaomi has. I'm just saying it based off of the image quality that we can get, and also based on the zoom test that we did, because man, OnePlus 12's 61 pixel 3x sensor is just insane. Almost makes me bloody wonder why didn't they use that sensor for the main camera. That would have been more sensible. But well, this is 5x, and 5x does have 50 megapixels on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, and well, 500% crop, and yes, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra does have more detail, but once again, the processing, I just feel like the processing doesn't take enough advantage of the hardware itself on the Xiaomi. Now then, the front camera, see, this is where the Xiaomi needs a lot of upgrades. One of the problems, as you can see here, it's not all that bad. This selfie in particular is not all that bad on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra as opposed to the OnePlus, which is doing a fantastic job. But you can see that it's significantly more flat, and this is where it really becomes a problem. The inconsistency and just the lack of contrast in many of the shots, just how flat some of your shots might turn out will surprise you on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. It's unfortunate that the front camera did not get the same love as the rear cameras did, especially with Leica Authentic, but that's just the way it is. OnePlus's selfie cameras processing and their consistency in general is fairly good. I wouldn't say the best out there, but it's definitely better than what the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is producing, and naturally I think this is absolutely where the Xiaomi 14 series needs to improve. Now, portrait selfies, and damn, there's no contrast on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. That doesn't work for me. Now this one, I would say it got a little bit better, because you know, the lighting is a little bit more contrasty in general. You can see it especially on the OnePlus 12, but the Xiaomi just doesn't have it. You know, it looks so flat and so boring. Now in this backlit shot, let me just explain myself. I think the OnePlus is producing an almost perfect image, because you can see it is maintaining good contrast and it has really good HDR processing. It is messing up the edge detection there, but still. The Xiaomi, on the other hand, it is both giving us a very flat result and it is blowing out the highlights. If it was just the highlights that were being slightly blown out, but it had really good contrast on my face and everything, I could have lived with that. But both problems, not gonna work for me. And selfies, another place where they obviously can improve a lot. The OnePlus it's not bad, it's better than what Xiaomi is producing in terms of details and noise reduction and less artifacting, but the skin tones are also wonky as all hell combined. And it is crushing shadows, so yeah, not exactly all that good on either. Now then, with rear camera portraits, there are a lot of options on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, and that's a really good thing. But there are also certain issues, and I'll get to that. This 1x zoom portrait looks really nice. It's actually better on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra because it doesn't look as underexposed as the OnePlus 12. But then you also get a 1.5x crop, which I think can give you really nice composition and just, it works really well for portraits to have a 1.5x or a 35mm shot. But having said that, I do think that the OnePlus is handling the highlights a little bit better on my face. It looks a little odd, like there's some kind of highlight reduction artifact that's happening on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, which doesn't really look all that nice. To be fair, it's a small difference. However, in this case, somehow both phones completely failed at the highlight preservation because it's just completely blown out on both. Now, look, if I had to pick one out of these two, I don't want to pick either, but if I had to, with a gun pointed at my head, then maybe I'd go for the OnePlus because I like the skin tones and the higher contrast a little bit more. Also, I think white balance is better on the OnePlus 12 given it was sunset. Now 3x or 75mm that we get on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. I think there's like a singular problem on both, but they are at the opposite spectrums here because the Xiaomi 13 Ultra looks a little too bright for just the way the lighting was, while the OnePlus 12 looks a little too dark. Something in between, for my personal preferences. I don't want to really draw attention to that. For my personal preferences, I would like something in between. You can very easily prefer the Xiaomi 13 Ultra in this case. Actually, I do prefer it because it is giving us clear shadows and the contrast isn't all that bad, to be entirely honest. Now 90mm, of course OnePlus has no such option, but unfortunately on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra it looks like hot garbage because there's this weird bloom or glow filter that Xiaomi has added and it's forced on. That's what bothers me. Like, yeah, fine, if you want to have a filter of some sort, then just give me the option and leave it as such. I'm never going to use this, obviously, and it just restricts an entire focal length on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra because of this filter. It's just something that can be fixed with the software update, but Xiaomi hasn't done anything as such. And well, this backlit 1x shot, I think OnePlus has a touch more contrast, which I prefer a little bit more, but to be honest, it's such a minor difference, it doesn't even matter because both are doing fairly well given the situation. Now for night portraits, yeah, I think you can tell which one takes it, right? It's you can see me in one and you cannot see me in the other. It cannot be any clearer than this. Moving on to night mode now, see, this is where things get very interesting. So the OnePlus, oh baby, it takes a very realistic route. Like, it will crush the shadows, simple, and will give you an exact nighttime looking shot whether you like it or not. And fortunately for OnePlus, I do like it, and it may not be the case for you, just saying. The Xiaomi on the other hand gives us the same kinds of options, like a vibrant and authentic. Now, like a vibrant will give you a generally brighter result. With like authentic, it will get closer to the OnePlus. It's not as dark, like the night sky is not nearly as dark as the OnePlus 12. But I do think it's a little too dark. You are losing some of the details in the shadows on the OnePlus because it's darkening the shadows so damn much. Now in this case, see, this is, it's interesting. So I kind of prefer how the sky looks on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. It looks appealing on the OnePlus 12, but not quite as realistic as I would personally like it. But the road and the white balance on the road, it looks kind of ridiculous on the Xiaomi. Now I am using Leica Authentic because I prefer just how much darker the night skies and shadows look in general, but well, the white balance is obviously off in this case. But of course, boys and girls, would you fancy an ultra low light? Because I've got one right here. And well, the Xiaomi 13 Ultra is about a few miles ahead of the OnePlus 12 when it comes to ultra low light for a simple reason. Not only does the Xiaomi 13 Ultra have a larger sensor, I think it has a larger sensor, but whatever the case, it takes a longer exposure and the software processing is much more optimized. And yes, I get it, it's a niche situation to say the very least. But still, it's something that the Xiaomi 13 Ultra can do and the OnePlus cannot. So it's important to know the difference, right? But of course, ultra-wide. Now, ultra-wide is actually really good on both. I do think that there's a little bit more artifacting in the sky. At least the gradient isn't quite as buttery smooth as the OnePlus 12. But I must say, it looks really nice on both. And I do believe that the Xiaomi 13 Ultra has better white balance because we did have warm street lights and it looks warmer on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra, more realistic that is. Now this is actually very close on both. I do think that the OnePlus 12 Sky is a little too blue for how night skies should actually naturally look like. The Xiaomi is doing a fantastic job. Like Authentic can sometimes give you such banger looking night skies, I really like it. You might prefer bluish skies, that's up to you. But then this was difficult, let me tell you right now, because the tree was really dark and it was a backlit shot that I took, and there's the night sky to handle. It's just a lot of things. And the Xiaomi is doing an exceptional job. It's way better than the OnePlus 12, which is just filled with noise and artifacting, and the sky is too bright, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't have nearly enough detail either, especially in a lot of the leaves. But then of course we also get the options for zoom, and this is a 1x shot, and I think both look really nice. I prefer the OnePlus 12 a little bit more. Yeah, slightly darker shadows, slightly more contrast, slightly more of a nighttime looking shot, so my personal preference goes there. Now then 2x sensor crop. Let's face it, neither of these are using the sensor crop in low light. That's just the way it is. The OnePlus doesn't use it properly in daylight either, but the Xiaomi, I would recommend not using it because you're just gonna get a lot of noise and artifacting, which I can see right here. Now 3x can actually be really good on both because they have really good sensors, and the OnePlus 12 is actually producing more detail, and I do prefer the contrast on the OnePlus 12. It looks very good and very realistic. Now then at 5x, now the Xiaomi does have the hardware advantage when it comes to 5x. But I think it's actually fairly close. OnePlus's quality can be very good, at least up to 5 or 6x, you can get really good shots, even in low light. But actually, to be completely fair, at 6x, I do see more detail on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra. You see, sensor crops don't really work all that well in low light. No matter how good it might be, more often than not, when you have low light situations, they just don't really work out. And at 10x, it can really seal the deal on the Xiaomi 13 Ultra because it can produce so much more detail as opposed to the OnePlus 12, simply because it has the optical zoom that can aid it to produce that detail. You can't really expect that from the OnePlus 12, which doesn't have the hardware for it. And so that's a wrap for this comparison with a nice little bow on top. So look, both phones have their problems. The OnePlus, it's bound to have some issues here and there, right? That's just gonna happen, especially because it's a lower priced device and all that jazz. It has its issues, but it's still a tremendous camera in my opinion. The Xiaomi 13 Ultra, for considering that it's just last year's device, it's keeping up and it's pulling ahead in areas, and it is a beautiful camera system, I'm telling you right now. But there are areas to improve. A lot of these areas are actually software related, which means that Xiaomi can actually improve these things without having to worry a lot about changing the hardware. I really hope that Xiaomi takes the initiative and makes these software changes, especially when it comes to detail preservation and all that jazz. There's definitely place to improve, and the selfie camera, for God's sake, optimize that thing. That's the best advice that I can give. Not that Xiaomi is gonna listen or anything, but that's just the way it is. Anywho, I'll see you guys soon with many more to come. Cheers.